Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, welcome back for another episode of Someone You Should Know. Going to have a good time today, and I'm sure you're going to learn something from this conversation today. And we are sponsored today by our good friends over at No Sweat Experts. Now, here in Northern Texas, you need only one air conditioning company, and that's No Sweat Experts. We're into September now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's getting that much cooler. So make sure that your system is operating well right now. And also, now's about the time to start looking into that transition into the fall when you want to go from that air conditioning to the heating system. So here in Northern Texas, the people you need to reach out to are No Sweat Experts. Give them a call. They'll take good care of you. Well, my very special guest today is Theresa DeWit. Welcome to the show, Theresa. Glad to have you.
Hello.
It's exciting to have you all the way from Idaho. I think you're the first guest I've had on my program from Idaho.
There are quite a few people who live here. I hope to represent well.
And you are up. It's interesting because Texas has a panhandle, Oklahoma has a panhandle, and you live in what's known as the panhandle of Idaho.
Yes, it's a northern part that gets real close up to Canada. We border on Canada.
You're that close to Canada? Oh, that must.
Yeah, my house personally is about 2 hours from the border.
Wow, must be absolutely gorgeous, especially in the fall when the trees.
Truly, we have a lot of deciduous trees, but we have a ton of fir and pine trees as well. We're mountainous. A lot of people know Idaho for its potatoes because
Right.
McDonald's actually buys a lot of our potatoes for their fries. But northern Idaho, we don't grow a lot. We got a lot of rocks here, mountains. It's great for hiking, outdoors, tons of lakes. It's a beautiful place.
Got to visit there sometime. I really do, because it's an area of the country that I have missed so far. So, well, you are right. It says right next to your name, joyfully married, and that is basically our subject. We are talking about relationships today, and Theresa is an expert about relationships, and it opens the door for a lot of questions. But the first thing I'm going to throw at you is, are relationships better or worse today than they were maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years ago?
I think it's harder to have a good relationship. There's so much bad advice out on TikTok and Instagram. People really puffing themselves up and saying, it's all about me, I'm the queen. And I'm speaking from a woman's point of view here. There's a huge movement among men who are saying, I'm never going to get married because those women are crazy. I think that in our empowerment has gone almost to the pendulum has swung a little bit too far to where people feel like I don't need another person. But now I'm 60 and I have a lot of friends who are single in their 60s, and they're kind of wishing they had a life partner. They're wishing that maybe they had been able to fix that relationship or had been able to find a person that they could get along with. Because when you go into your older age, it's lovely. It's lovely to have a partner. I think it's lovely to have a partner your whole life.
Right. Well, but also when you get into your 60s, you realize that there are probably a lot of men and women in their 60s that have had one other partner in life, or maybe two other partners in life. They're maybe on number 3 or 4. So, each time you get into a relationship, and I agree, I think everybody says, I really would like to have somebody else in my life, somebody to share my life with, no matter how old you are. But if this is the second or third or fourth time around for you, what do people have to learn each time they go out of a bad relationship and they enter into a new relationship?
It's important, I believe, to I believe that a relationship needs to be give, give. And I come from a give first model. A lot of people would say, well, I'll be nice to him. Women might say, I'll be nice to him, or we'll have sex or whatever if he does X, Y, and Z for me. But I don't believe that that's a model that is sustainable. You can't always be super selfish. I think we need to give. And this is, again, this is part of the reasons why some of the things I say are not necessarily all that popular, but they're true. They work. They work for our grandparents. They work for our great grandparents, and they can work for us today. We can't always die on a certain mountain of what we expect from our partner. Sometimes we need to give and serve first. And so that's the type of model I come from, that we help out, we give, we serve, maybe we forgive first. And that's okay, man or woman, that's okay.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because if the process is good, then why in so many cases today is there a divorce? If everything was so good, then what went wrong to cause it to fall apart? And I think that's part of the process of thinking back and saying, what did I do right and what did I do wrong in order not to do it again?
We do have to examine ourselves after a bad relationship, and we need to take responsibility for the things that we did. There's so many times I'll speak with somebody, for instance, the awful circumstance of infidelity. That is a huge deal breaker in most relationships. A lot of people will try to get through it, but it's oftentimes something that will lead to divorce, infidelity. But if you are the person that has been cheated on, man or woman, you need to ask yourself, what was my part in this?
Yeah, because there's
Was
always
I
two
loving?
sides to every story.
There sure is. And a lot of people want to just blame the other party. It was him, it was him, it was her, it was her. But when we stop and we ask ourselves, what was my part? Was I giving first? Was I loving? Was I forgiving? What are the things that I didn't do that led to the grass looking greener on the other side for my partner and them straying from our relationship?
Do you find in your research and experience that infidelity is actually becoming a little bit more accepting today than it was 20 or 40 years ago?
I think because we don't have that biblical model that permeates our society any longer, the biblical model of right and wrong, that infidelity is wrong and you don't cheat on your partner. We have again, that pendulum has swung. And we have more of an idea that, free love. We're back in the 60s, that we should be able to just, if we like a guy, what's the problem? Our kids. There's a lot of partner exchange. It used to be that people valued having one partner for life,
Right.
that having a lower body count, as people sometimes call it, having less sex partners was valued, but now having more sexual experience is more valued amongst our younger people. And so that leads to, and then and I will say one more thing in regards to that. There's the idea that animalistic needs, we all have needs and we should be able to serve our needs, and men aren't intended to be just with one partner, that they're intended to have multiple partners to procreate. Those types of beliefs, those are some of the beliefs that I think that are ruining our hopes to have great relationships over a long period of time.
I think you're absolutely right. And I remember back in my day, and I go way back, and my wife and I have been married for 50 years. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. And
that's awesome. I love it.
And I will tell you that we are sometimes in social situations where we mention that, and people look at us like we are the exception rather than the rule. And I think we are, because to find people that have been together and married. And yeah, we've had our ups and downs, but we understand each other. And that's why we have endured for 50 years. But there are so many people in our age group that have just been married on their third marriage or something. They've been married 5 years or 20 years or so, that this lasting relationship just doesn't seem to be as popular anymore as what it was. And you brought up a point about sexual experiences. Back when I was dating and everything, we were told, wait until you get married to really have those sexual experiences, and all, to find out if it's true love and all. Today, even the parents of today will say to their kids, why don't you two live together for a while to see if you're compatible before you consider getting married? So it's almost like the reverse of what we were told a generation or two ago. But I don't know if that's a healthy, acceptable answer. Is it?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that. Oh, well, I mean, I think that waiting until marriage to have I come from a biblical point of view. And so waiting until marriage is I think it can be a healthy thing. My sweet niece just got married and they were virgins and loved Jesus, and the most beautiful relationship. We were talking, and my so I was across the table from her, and she goes, "Hi," and this is a few months ago before they got married. She says, "Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see him. I'm so excited." And I said, "How long's it been since you guys have, or how long have you been apart?" And she said, "Yesterday." It was so cute. And she's a college graduate. She's going to be a physician. She's not a dumb girl. She's a very smart, beautiful.
This
She's
was
gorgeous.
meaningful. Yeah.
And that purity, there's something absolutely just heartwarming to see that kind of purity and that pure love.
Yeah.
And it would be good. There was an example that I used to teach with my kids. And you take a paper heart, right? Take a paper heart, cut a heart out, pink paper, purple, whatever. And you explain to your children that each time you have sex with another person, it tears out a bit of that heart. A little chunk of that heart is gone. Each relationship you have. So then when you finally meet the one and you decide to get married, what you have left to give them is this broken, tattered, damaged heart that's left. And if you can keep that heart all together and whole and save it for that your one true love, that can be a gorgeous, beautiful experience.
I mean, it's unfortunate that today, if two people are getting married and on their wedding day they are both virgins, people around them would look and say, "What? I mean, are you crazy? You are looked down upon instead of looked up at, and respected for that, because it is not the norm. It just isn't,
No.
fully accept. And another thing that I want your input on is, I have in my circle of friends and my interactions with the faith community, there seem to be more and more churches that are offering premarital premarital courses for young people that are engaged in preparing to get married, in order to prepare them for what is ahead, rather than them just saying, well, we're getting married because we love each other. There are a lot of elements before you say your I do's and embark on this 50-year journey, like my wife and I, to consider before you go to the altar. And I think it's important that young people reach out to their faith community to say, we would like a little bit of help. I mean, women go through Lamaze and everything, preparing for childbirth, to learn what the process is and what they're going to go through. And why not do this before two people get married? Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. There are some churches that will say, we won't even marry you unless you've gone through our 2 or 3 months of premarital counseling. Because you're right. If you're going through your birth classes to have a child, that's a one-day event, maybe
Yep.
two on the
Yep.
outside. And then you've had the child and you don't need that again until you have another one. But with a premarital type counseling classes, books, my book, Less Conflict, More Joy. I wrote that for young people who are, because I have 5 kids. When I wrote it, they still are all in marrying age. None of them are married. They're 23 to 31. And 2 are my stepkids. But in that group of kids, I wanted to be able to share with them some of the things that work in relationships. And I found that this, as well as being a primer for relationships, it's also a really great refresher for people who are in a relationship but need to come back to some of the simple principles that can help them succeed. Things that you can learn today, you can apply it tonight, and then begin having a better relationship tomorrow. And I believe that learning and ongoing learning, it's not just before you get married. Lots of churches are offering different type of marriage encounters where both of you will go to church for a weekend retreat kind of a thing, and renew and remember how to have conversations. We've forgotten some of the our phones. We have forgotten some of the beauty of having a conversation with your spouse after work, touching base to find out what the day was like. What did you go through? What were the good parts? What were the hard parts? How can I pray for you? How can I encourage you?
You're absolutely right. And you touched upon a point by holding up your phone. I can't tell you how many times my wife and I will go out to a restaurant to sit down, have something to eat, and there's couples all around us. Both of them are glued to their phones. And the only time they put the phone down is when the food is served. And then they look at their food, they have a few bites of their food and everything, and then they check out their phone again. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, wasn't the reason for coming to a nice restaurant to have a nice dinner together to have a conversation and interact with each other? Call it date night. I mean, why is it a date night if both of you are 12 inches away from your phone screen, and that basically is your dinner together? And then you get up from the table and you say, oh, that was a good dinner, wasn't it? It was a terrible dinner. You didn't even interact all that time you were there.
Agreed. There are things that I talk about again in my book, Less Conflict, More Joy, that I really talked. There are pitfalls you can fall into, and our phone is the insidious third person in our relationship.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's an issue of TikTok brain, where you can only pay attention to anything for less than a minute, or no ability to have a conversation any longer because you're just always used to being fed information and not having to actually have a conversation like we're having today, where you let one person talk, give them a sec, let the other person respond. The art of conversation is lost in our fast-paced society with the influence of our phones in our faces all the time. And I'm guilty. So I need to remember that when my husband and I are connecting after work or on the weekend or a date night, then my phone either stays in the car or it's face down. I'm ignoring notifications on my wrist, or I'll put it in airplane mode or do not disturb, because the most important thing in my life besides my creator is my husband. And I want to keep my priority intact. And the only way I can do that is to put my phone down, because that phone is low on that priority scale.
Yeah, and it should be lower on most people's priority scale. You're absolutely right. We're scrolling across the screen, folks that are watching and listening. TheresaDeWit.com. I want you to go into the website and look at it. You will learn a lot more about her book, Less Conflict and More Joy, because I think just the title itself says so much, because you will get more joy out of things that you do when you have less conflict. And conflict, to me, only breeds more conflict. and you're going to get a heck of a lot more joy out of your life if you try to put conflict on the back burner and keep the joy up front. How long ago did you pen that book?
I published in 2020. No, 2022. I apologize. 2 years ago in August.
Okay, so it's been out for a few years, and what was your impetus for saying, I have got to write this book?
I guess getting into my mid 50s and later, I had to ask myself, what's the purpose in my life? I've been a flight attendant for a very long time, 35 years. And I can certainly make an individual's day a little bit better. I can have a great relationship with my coworkers. As a leader on the plane, I often set the tone for what's going to
Mhm.
happen with my crew and with our interactions with the customers on board. But that's such a small thing. And I was challenged to ask myself, how do I want to make a difference in the world? And I thought, I prayed. I prayed a lot about it. And it really came out because I learned so much through reflection from my failed first marriage to a successful second marriage, both being 16 years. So where that I learned so much. I went to classes and I read books and I used to listen to cassette tapes and take notes from cassette tapes. I listened to radio programs back in the day when we had radio that we listened to.
Right.
And I learned so much on how to have, first of all, I was trying to, how do I fix my first relationship? How do I make it last? How do I keep divorce proof it? And I wasn't successful, but I learned a lot in the process because I was a young, very immature woman when I married my first husband. And there were a lot of mistakes that I made. I mean, there were things that he did, we both, again, the two-way street, there's both of us. And I did a lot of reflection. And now I've learned what it takes to have a successful marriage. And my current husband, I mean, he's not your soft, chatty kind of guy. He's a contractor. He's in the trades. He's a man's man. And how do I relate to him in a way that can draw him out, that can allow for him to have his time? Sometimes there's a little bit of an aside here, but sometimes we want to control the other person's time and activities and interests. And I'm not interested in that. I want to say, when you have time, just like you would to a friend. And another huge thing in making a relationship good is how we greet our partner at the end of a day. Even at the early in the day. At the end of the day, when the two of you get home, it's so important to be friendly, to put your phone down, to get out of your screen and interact with the other human being in the room. Setting that an intention for our evenings together can make such a difference in your marriage. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned.
You're absolutely right, because when I stop and think how many men and women come home from work, the first thing they got to do is pour themselves a stiff drink.
Mm.
And why does that take place, of giving your spouse a hug and saying, that hug will probably make you feel a hell of a lot better than the liquid at the bottom of that glass.
There's studies that prove that
Yeah.
say that a 20-second hug or a 10-second kiss releases all those endorphins and those feel-good hormones. It also helps quell those negative stress hormones that go on in our, just a 20-second hug, or I'm sorry, a 6-second kiss. Those two things with our partner. And when you do that on a regular basis, I'm talking at least every day, if not multiple times a day, it helps keep you calm. And it works for our kids too. Not in the kisses, for instance, but hugs can be a huge thing for our kids to help them feel safe, welcomed, loved, treasured. all those feel good things. And they don't even recognize how that after 10 seconds, 15 seconds, all of a sudden you go, just let that out. You let all that drama go. And you're right. That 20-second hug can do the same as a double shot of whiskey.
Now, see what's worked for my wife and I is that we go for the 6-second hug and the 20-second kiss.
There we go. That's it.
Well,
That
so
is how to keep your marriage fresh. Absolutely.
there you go. Well, so you also, as part of visiting the website, is that you can reach out to Theresa if you have questions, you have concerns, you would like for her to address your group, whether it's in person or virtually. She's more than willing to get involved with you on a one-to-one basis or with a group. So, I mean, you have worked in essence with trying to counsel people. And a lot of times if people are in trouble, they will say, well, we'll just go for counseling. You know, are there are there alternatives to the traditional counseling, going and sitting down with somebody who's got a notebook in front of them and they're writing notes about you saying what's wrong with each other? What are some of the alternatives to going that road?
I see coaching, which is what I do. I am not a therapist by trade. I'm a flight attendant. I do have a bachelor's degree in communication, and I've read so many books. I should show you my bookshelf over here. So many books on relationships that I feel like I've gotten my little master's degree on my own in relationships.
You did it the practical way.
Right. Actually read books.
Yeah.
And applied them. But there's two different things, the difference between a counselor and a coach. Oftentimes, a counselor is going to listen to your issues and respond to them and help you work through those kind of things. But really thinking about what's happened in the past. And a coach, on the other hand, is going to take you into the future. I don't even need to know all the issues in your relationship because we're not going to necessarily, I'm not going to try to go back and fix things. What we want to do is go forward and come up with an action plan. So what I do in addition to my book, I have this action guide. Oops, let me get in front of the screen here. This action guide that you can get both of these on Amazon, by the way, or go to joyfullymarried.com and you can grab the book, and the action guide is free for $10. Just pay me shipping, and that basically covers my printing costs. But my point is but when you have specific things that you can do, starting with those hugs and those kisses, developing, really nurturing your physical relationship with your partner. If you're roommates, you don't have a physical relationship. Maybe it's a quick hug and then move on. But when you're in a married relationship, when you have a long-term relationship with somebody, you need to continue to have that physical glue at any age, at any physical state. You don't have to be able to have sex to still be intimate with your partner. And because I know that as we age, not all of us have that ability to continue to have sex. Different things happen, medical things happen, but you can still be intimate. And those being intimate is so important to keep maintaining the glue in your relationship. So that's one of the first things I work on with people. We talk a lot about communication. We talk a lot about giving first, as I was saying earlier. And then I go through it. The book has 14 simple strategies that a person can learn today, apply tonight, and have a better marriage tomorrow. Because it's all about taking action.
On the website, it shows those 14 strategies are outlined on the website, and also it gives you an idea of the direction that you can go in and the various points. And to think, well, the main thing is just to be a better husband or be a better wife. No, if there are 14 key issues, then there are more than one or two that you need to work on. You need to know what all of them are and then work on all 14 of them in order to be a better person. And I mean, Do you see in your research and talking with people and all of the research that you have done that there are, certain habits and mistakes that just seem to keep popping up that cause people to have rocky marriages?
I would say that's really individual. So for some people, it's selfishness. For some people, it's a mismatch of love languages. Have you heard of the love languages?
No, that explain that.
That's a book by Gary Chapman. I was had permission from the publisher to include in chapter 5 about the 5 love languages. It's 5 different ways that we give and express love and receive love. And it's usually based on how we receive love, and then we turn around and usually express love in the same way. So for some people, it's acts of service. Some people want to give and help. They're helpers. And
Mhm.
so when they feel loved is when other people help them. Another person is words of affirmation. It's when you got that pat on the back for doing a good job, or building somebody up, or being an encourager. That can be another type of love language. And when other people encourage you or tell you did a great job, you feel loved. And the third one is giving gifts. Some people love to express their love during special holidays and moments in another person's life. And that gift giving, a gift giver feels more loved when someone remembers their birthdays, their anniversaries, Mother's Day, at Valentine's, all those things. The fourth thing is quality time. Quality time is when we sit and we talk. We maybe go for a walk, we converse, we share each other's hearts. Some people really feel loved when they sit and talk with another person. And sometimes it's just being together and doing something together. Like my husband's maybe mowing the lawn and I'm weeding the garden, but we're out working on a project together. That's quality time. And then the fifth one is physical touch. And that is the whole gamut from hugs to sex. Well, and it could be an arm. For instance, I had a one of the ladies I was coaching. She and her husband, they were going through a medical issue. They were on a way to one of his treatments. And we talked about her love language, his love language. And she goes, well, I think physical touch is one of his. And I said, well, but we can't have sex right now. I'm like, okay, well, what else can you do? I said, how about next time you're going to a treatment, you just put your hand on his thigh as you're driving to the car, or I mean, in the car as you're driving to the treatment. And she reported back to me. She says, I did it. And later on that night, he said, I felt so loved when you put your hand on my thigh in the car because I felt like we were connected and you were there with me. Isn't that simple?
Yeah, and it costs nothing. It costs zero to show that little touch of affection, to say I love you. I have always
Right.
told my friends that I don't have to necessarily say I love you to my wife every day, because I can just look into her eyes and I know it. No words have to be spoken, but just looking at each other, just knowing that she's there, I'm there, and we're connecting. And you brought up another good point that I think is important for people to take advantage of, and that is go for a walk sometime. You know, put the phone on mute or in your pocket, turn it off, whatever, but go for a walk and find out that you actually can talk to each other about things. And what do you think of this? Or is it the sky beautiful tonight? Or where would you like to go this weekend? Maybe we'll go out for dinner, or let's take a little 2-day trip someplace. You're talking to each other and sharing a conversation, and you're a little bit out of your element because you're off the couch and not in front of the TV screen trying to decide Netflix or Prime movie tonight. uh, you are sharing a conversation. And another thing you brought up, Teresa, that I think is important, you said gifts. And as somebody that's been married for 50 years, I can tell you that my wife and I don't exchange gifts just on anniversaries and birthdays. doesn't have to be a holiday. It doesn't have to be Valentine's Day or Mother's Day or Father's Day. Sometimes I just see something and I pick it up and I get it for her just to say, I love you. Pick up a bouquet of flowers and bring it home for her to put into a vase for no reason, no special occasion. And I challenge especially the men out there. When was the last time that you were in a pharmacy or whatever, and you went down the card aisle and you just picked up an I love you card, addressed it to your wife, put a stamp on it, and dropped it in the mail? Do you have any idea how many points you will score when she opens up that mail?
Right. Yes.
You know,
Truly, I do that on occasion as well. We aren't big gift givers, my husband and I, and understanding those 5 love languages is understanding what your love language is and what your partner's love language is or languages are,
right,
and then learning to express your love for your partner in their love language. And I'll give you an example. For instance, I'm an acts of service, words of affirmation, pat me on the back, tell me I did a great job, and help, and as I do things for you. But my husband is physical touch and quality time. So completely different. I'll do all day long. And
right.
he just wants me to stop and talk. And so I need to understand that I need to stop what I'm doing, go into his office or wherever he's at the time, and just sit and listen. Sometimes I sit and wait till whatever he's finished with what he's doing and chit chat. Just chit chat, because that makes him feel love. Now that is not my go-to expression for love. Mine is do your laundry, cook the dinner, go to the grocery store, grocery store, do those things. But for him, if I stop and I listen, if I scratch his back, because that's physical touch, right? It isn't sex. But it's physical touch to make him feel love. So those touch moments, those hugs are really important for our relationship. And that's when I express love to him in his love language, he then feels love. Because sometimes if all I did all day long is do things, my go-to acts of service thing, if all I did is do things for him, those would be love arrows that I'd be shooting, but completely missing him.
Yeah. And like you
He
said,
needs to receive a different type of love than I tend to give.
yeah, even if you are just sitting on the couch and you are watching a movie or a TV show together, just reach over and touch their hand,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and no words have to be expressed. It's just that act of love and kindness that scores lots of points.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, are those some of the little things that you try to share with people to tell them that those are the ways to avoid conflict in a marriage, is by taking those little steps up front?
Gary Chapman, one of the things he says, I don't know if it's in Love Languages book or one of his others, but he talks about a love bucket, that we all have this love bucket and we need five inputs into that bucket of our other partner before we do one withdrawal. And withdrawal might be a correction, a comment, it has to be 5-1, positive to negative for balance. And it seems like, well, I should just be able to give one compliment and then say something negative. No, it doesn't work that way. You really do have to fill up that love tank, that love bucket, before you start making withdrawals. And Gary Chapman also talks about in terms of, and I have to borrow his stuff because it's just so good. But in terms of having a conversation about something negative, we start out, think of it like a hamburger. Then we start out with a bun, which is something positive, a positive trait that we acknowledge about our partner to them. Then maybe there's the cheese or the lettuce and the toppings, that's another positive thing. Then the meat is the issue we need to talk about. And then you follow it up with the other bun, which is another compliment on their character, on what they're doing, on how you feel loved. And this works with our kids. This works with our if we have coworkers or people that we supervise, that we always kind of sandwich. We sandwich the meat with, it's not fluff, it's honest, genuine feedback, positive feedback for the person. Again, it's 5 in, 1 out. So that you really are building up the other person.
That's interesting. I like that 5 in and 1 out concept. Well, the book again is Less Conflict and More Joy. And I think you're offering a very, very great deal for people to get the book simply by paying for the shipping and the handling. I mean, that's awesome. And also, folks, you might want to take advantage of that, because it not only could be a good book for you in your marriage, but it also might be a good book for you to get a couple of copies and have to share with your children and all in their marriages and their situations, either after the fact or before the fact.
Absolutely.
I
And it's
think that's
it's very
important.
simple. There's short chapters. It's easy to get through because I don't have time for fluff. So there's not a lot of fluff. It's just a lot of great information condensed into short chapters. And then the action guide takes another, if you get the action guide as well, it takes another 10 minutes maybe to fill it out after a chapter. So it's also one of the things I do for a larger book group. I'm happy to host it. Y'all buy the books, I'll host your sessions. We'll do 14 weeks, and we'll just come on, we'll do a Zoom call, and I love doing that kind of thing. I speak to groups. I speak to women's groups. I speak to women in business a lot, actually, because I've been also an entrepreneur. I have a number of different hats besides being a flight attendant. And I love to speak to women, because even though you're in business, you're also in relationships. And when our relationships are healthy, then our business work is a lot easier, because you don't have that stress and drama affecting our day-to-day work.
And today there are more women that are in business and are entrepreneurs on their own than there were, a few decades back too. Theresa, you are an absolute joy, and you have taken an issue that many people maybe don't want to face, and you've tried to make it a lot easier. TheresaDeWit.com. Visit the website. Consider getting the book and all, because I think you will find it to be very, very helpful. You said something earlier that reminded me of an old, very, very brief song by the Beatles. And it's at the very end of, I think, the White Album. And the lyrics are, "The love you take is equal to the love you make." And it's a very, very simple lyric that is very, very important for all of us to remember. And I always end my show every week by saying, be yourself, because everyone else is already taken. And so that will do it for another episode of Someone You Should Know. And again, a very, very big thank you to Theresa DeWit, who I very much appreciate having you on the program, Theresa.
Thank you so much for hosting me today.
Go out, make it a good day.
Thank you.
Someone